Okay, I'd like to go ahead and introduce some guests we have with us today. It's to my immediate right is Elizabeth Cooper, who is the Shenandoah County Commonwealth's attorney. Elizabeth, thanks for spending a few minutes of time today with us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
And to Elizabeth's right, we have David Hinegardner. David is, I've known David for a long time. Right now, his current position is Assistant Superintendent of Shenandoah County Public Schools. So again, thanks, Dave, for coming in. And then there to the end of the table is Whitney Mauck, Captain Whitney Mauck. She is the division head of our sports services, and our school resource officers fall within that division. So let's talk a little bit about the non-criminal stuff. One of the things I tell parents is you got to be the parent. And kids have enough friends, so go be the parent. And we were talking a little bit about, okay, let me just start this. I know the schools are going to enact a policy where cell phones are not allowed in classrooms. Is that when does that go into effect, David?
Well, the board is contemplating that right now.
Okay.
And all the nuances of that policy. And I would expect it to go into actual probably within a month.
Okay.
And that will entail when students can have phones at school.
And that'll help us during school hours, but I think I said this when we were talking before. It's been 24 days of school since school started, and we've had 16 incidents of either sharing posts or social media platform stuff about school violence or verbal threats or whatever. So I guess my point is that would help during school, but after school you get those issues, Elizabeth.
You do.
And, I think a parent can be the parent and control the access to the phone after school, don't you think?
Yep. And that's one of the things that we routinely do in the courtroom when a child is brought in, and the parents are always going to be there in a courtroom anytime a child is brought in. One of the things that we routinely look at is how much access that child is having to the internet, how much access that child is having to a cell phone. There is a multitude of studies that show the impact of social media and cell phone usage and internet usage and access on children's mental health and anxiety. Every single threat, I think, not every single one, I would say a majority of the threats that we have dealt with so far in Shenandoah County this year concerning fear in schools for violence have come from a social media platform of some sort. There have been a couple that have not, but those are the exceptions, not the rule.
Right.
Most of them have come from this, and a lot of them have started either on the bus or in the evening.
Right.
They have started when children are outside of school, when they're in their parents' care. And as long as that child is a child and has guardians, those guardians have the ability to limit that child's access to cell phones, to computers, and to the internet. And right now, particularly with everything going on in our nation with the school threats and with some of the violence that has happened, we are highly encouraging parents to be monitoring that very, very carefully. I can tell you one of the first things that's going to happen, and that has happened in this community with children that have been brought in our courtrooms because of these threats, the first thing is they are completely limited.
Right. Now, one of the things, like, just so we can talk about before they're charged or a non-criminal charge, what we see, David, is we'll see kids, what we call sharing it out. Mm-hmm. So Whitney receives some type of a social media, either she creates it or she receives it from someone. Then she sends it to me. And then I send it to a friend, and that friend sends it to another friend. And what begins to happen, because as Elizabeth said, usually this happens at night or over the weekend, and the next thing you know, we've got like dozens and dozens of people openly questioning if there's going to be tomorrow some kind of a school violence incident. And what do we usually do with those, Whitney, when we get that kind of a
typically by the time that they have shared it out, it could be affecting the north end schools, and then it trickles to Stonewall, and then it's central, and by the end of it, the whole community is being impacted by it. When that happens, the SROs come out. Doesn't matter what time it is, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. They go to each individual student's house, trying to gather as much information as we can, getting consent to search from the parents to search their bedrooms, their cell phones, any planners or notebooks or anything to see if there's any inclination of a school attack.
And these things, Elizabeth, we're not even at the point where we're even thinking about charging anyone at that point.
Right.
And it's really an old school, I hate to use the term, it's like an old school way of going out and you're literally going house to house.
Right.
Going to that kid's house, and then from that kid, going to that kid's house, and from that kid, going to that kid's house. And that's what we do. And I don't know that the public has an understanding that that's actually something that we're doing behind the scenes, and sometimes it takes most of the night, if not all night.
Right.
So when the school system puts out a bulletin saying it's not credible, it's because we've been personally to each one of those houses, had interviews with parents, had interviews with kids, and we've seen that, okay, this kid didn't write it, but they shared it out. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's tremendously labor intensive to do that. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's it's investigation of the crime, but it's also invasive, and it has to be because of the nature of these threats to the children of our community, the families of our community. There isn't any other way to do it but the way that you're talking about doing it, which is making sure these things have not happened.
Right, and I know
aren't going to happen. That there isn't any indicator that what has been said is in fact have some reality to it, because that's when tragedy hits. So.
Right. And I mean, David, as far as you guys are concerned, I know when you put stuff out, as far as the notice to parents, I've seen from time to time on social media might be some criticism because we don't put enough detail out, or you don't put enough detail out. To me, the detail is that we've gone and we've had that personal contact. There is no crime at this point. We've already consulted with the Commonwealth. There's no crime. It's basically a sharing out incident, but we feel like we're compelled to put something out. So, but that's one of the things, just so people know behind the scenes what happens, the coordination that happens between law enforcement and our school system.
Right. That we provide is accuracy.
Right.
That's very important for us. We don't want to put out a message that's not true or is inaccurate. Right. And we don't just come across that information quickly. It takes some time, and oftentimes, students' text messages and children's messages to their parents are much quicker than what we can provide, because we're trying to make sure the validity and the accuracy of the information that we put out. So I know that's frustrating sometimes to parents as well.
I think sometimes it might be, but at the same time, we've taken the position here that if we're not making a criminal charge, we want the schools to put out whatever they think they need to put out based on the level of social media attention, what kind of pressures that are happening right there before school or during the weekend. And because our position is, if it's not something we can make a charge on, then the schools,
it's more
put a notification out. Right. Yeah. Put a notification out, because there may be, as we talked earlier about sharing out, might be some type of administrative action the schools take.
That absolutely is. And in fact, that was in our meeting message that was sent out last week. And that was that just sharing this information is there's going to be a consequence for it, because it absolutely stirs fear and worry among people, and it's unnecessary. We've said, if you receive a message on your phone of a threatening nature, tell an adult.
Right.
Don't share it.
Right.
Tell an adult. If you're at home, tell a parent. If you're at school, tell a teacher or an administrator. Right. But sharing it just perpetuates this problem.
Right.
Well, and to add to that, one of the things too is I understand where if a parent, me being a parent myself, you hear something like that and you'd want to call your other parent friends. But in this situation, no, call the sheriff's office. Mm-hmm. Call the sheriff's office. Calling other people is going to perpetuate what, at this point, we have not found a ton of validity to there being an act of violence about to occur. Right. We have found that there have been threats in situations, and we have charged those. And we do have, children that are unfortunately being held waiting, to hear what's going to happen. But in the event that a parent hears this, calling you and your office or the local police, whatever law enforcement agency is available, to let you do your job instead of calling multiple parents or telling everyone at a school event, it can stop immediately once you all can get your hands on it and do your job. And that's usually best, because otherwise the miscommunication about it just grows, and then the fear grows, and that's what we don't want.
And as far as the criminal charge, we're running into what I'm seeing this year, and almost all the time. It's either written or verbal, mm-hmm. sometimes both. Mm-hmm. But there are different code sections dealing with each of those. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you want to talk about any of those. I know the verbal, usually it's between two people. Mm-hmm. And usually what happens is you and I are having this exchange. I make the comment, the statement, the threat, or whatever, and Whitney overhears it. Mm-hmm. And then Whitney then tells her friends, mm-hmm. and then her friends tell friends. Mm-hmm. And then we have to track that down and find out, was it actually said? Who was it said? What was said? And that kind of, we take the position here, Elizabeth, when somebody makes a threat, we believe them.
Right. And so one of the biggest things with a threat, whether verbal or whether written, and they're two different code sections and mm-hmm. two different violations of the law. But one of the biggest things is instilling fear. Mm-hmm. So if a person overhears someone saying it to someone else, but that person overhears it and it instills a level of fear, that's where, that's essentially what a threat is, and that's what we're looking at. So if two kids are joking back and forth and they would never think that it was a threat, but another person hears that and says, I'm terrified, and goes, and oh my gosh, did you hear what they just said? That's where we go, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And again, the problem there is that, like I mentioned earlier, this is something that is going on nationally right now. Mm-hmm. There have been mm-hmm. recent school shootings, which mm-hmm. have been tragic for those communities, tragic for those families, tragic for those schools, tragic for those education systems. And I get that children, hearing this, knowing this, having their parents worried about them, having their teachers, their administrators worried about them. Obviously, our schools have been very proactive in trying to make sure there is support for the nerves of the children, the fear mm-hmm. and anxiety around this. Joking about it is a really, really poor way to deal with this right now, and that is where parents can come in and talk to their children about, are you nervous about this? If so, what are some good ways to cope with your anxiety about this? Joking is not one of them. Mm-hmm. Talking about this, mm-hmm. Unless you're in a professional setting, certainly they have counseling sessions in the school and those kinds of things, which can be great. Mm-hmm. They always have the SROs that they could ask questions to, but joking with their friends about that, because it has been something that is on their mind, is just, it's a very scary thing.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we see with social media, they believe when they send some message to each other, mm-hmm. that's the only person that sees it.
Not at all.
Right. Or at least, maybe when I say they believe that's the culture they're mm-hmm. in. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm communicating with you, and these guys are not part of it. Mm-hmm. But what's happening is you are part of it because you're part of the friend group, and she may be sharing that with you, or I may then have another exchange with you about that exchange. And I don't know, Whitney, you want to touch on that with young people?
They'll take something that they saw on TikTok or Facebook or whatever social media app, and then screenshot it and post it to their story on Snapchat. Then anyone who's friends with them on Snapchat then sees it, screenshots it, shares it, screenshots it, shares it, and it just keeps going. So I think that's what we're seeing the most of here.
And I think, Elizabeth, going back to your point, I mean, I think it's just they're in a world where when we were their age, they didn't even cross our minds because we didn't have that tool or that capability that they can just...
And it's constant.
Right.
Yeah.
And everything is permanent. I cannot stress that enough. And again, that's one of the, among, like I said earlier in our talk, there's a lot of research about the effects of social media, cell phone time, internet usage with children, just the effects of that on the brain, how quickly information is spread, how quickly a message can go from one person to 250. That could happen in a matter probably of I would say 5 minutes here in Shenandoah County. And so, when it comes to, as Captain Mauck just said, when it comes to you think Snapchat is just you, oh gosh, no, not only is it not just you, and that person that you're sending it to could screenshot it, or someone could be behind them that oversees it. We also have mechanisms within our investigative tools, as the sheriff knows, if it's deemed a credible threat, or if it's deemed something that really is, we really need to see what's going on here, we can get a search warrant into that account, and we will very quickly see everything that has come and gone from that account. Now, granted, that takes probable cause, right? We go through the appropriate legal channels to get that, but Snapchat is not something, those messages don't just come and go. Those messages are permanent. They are stored. We can get access to them, particularly when we are investigating a crime, and absolutely will do so in an effort to protect the citizens and the children, the most vulnerable of our community.
And I'll tell you the other thing I've noticed also, I've been doing this for a long time. When I first got elected, we only had, I think it was 2 radio stations, 2 or 3 newspapers, 1 television station, two television stations. My point is, even things outside of our county now, like we've had that just this week. And I think it was last week. Last week was the stuff that was going on in Frederick County that bled over into our county. And we had this week the stuff in Harrisburg, Rockingham that kind of bled into our county. And I think part of it is that you have organizations and people that I don't know, they have a business, or they just because of social media, it doesn't stay locally, I guess is my point. And that impacts our community. Because I'm sure what's happening here is being felt over in Warren County and Frederick County and the like. So I don't know. It's just it's the world that we're in right now with social media.
Of course, the kids are watching their parents on this much social media too. Yeah. Everybody could afford to have a little bit less social media, and a whole lot more one-on-one time with their families. And
to this point, I think it's important to recognize, as it's been said, kids can't get away from it, or they don't get away from it.
Right.
Going back to what you were saying, when we were younger, if something wasn't fun at school, we at least got away from it when we went home.
Right.
Now that doesn't happen, and I think that is a lot to do with the stress, the mental health, the worry, the fear, and anxiety that students have. It's constant.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
You went home at night and watched the news. You went home at night and saw what happened during the day.
Right. When we were little, I didn't want to watch the news.
No.
I didn't care what was going on around, outside of what was happening at lunch that day or recess.
Now they watch news all day. There's nothing that you get home and talk to your parents about that you didn't all already learn during the day.
Right.
There isn't any. It's all an equal amount of constant information coming at them, and so to them, it probably isn't as scary as it is to us. The threats. To be honest, it isn't, because they see it all appalled and they see videos that they think are funny on TikTok or memes or whatever, and they're laughing at it. So they're like, whatever.
They're desensitized.
They're totally desensitized to it. And but we can't help but do our jobs associated with what they're desensitized to.
Well, I think, what I hope parents and people that watch this video understand is that we're all sitting here working hard to try and make sure that the environment is a safe environment for people to get their education.
That's right.
Oh, sure.
And we also are working hard to make sure that we're doing the best we can within the system that we have. Because I really think we do in Shenandoah County do that. I really do.
I agree.
And that's a point I wanted to stress is, folks get aggravated and they don't understand and they don't like some of the things that we have to put in place or that we try to do. But at the end of the day, this is all about safety. It's not about punishing people, restricting what you can and can't do. It's about safety of kids and staff in the school, and that's what the decisions are based on. And I know sometimes it's frustrating when parents want to pick up their children, and when we're in a situation and we can't release them. I know that's very frustrating to them. But it's all about keeping people safe.
Right, and I don't know if parents understand this, but we've talked about this, for the last 25, 30 years. I mean, there's a lot of planning and pre-planning into school violence incidents here in Shenandoah County, training, and just policy decisions and things like that are behind the scenes.
Yeah, I would be completely remiss if I didn't say you just don't know how much we appreciate that, and we appreciate the support. And when we get a call and we call you guys, or you guys get a call and you call us, the collaboration, the support, the backing is phenomenal. And I know the school system is greatly appreciative of that.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, I mean, I would just say on the back end of it is that whether you intended it to incite fear or intended it as a joke, a lot of it has to do, at least initially, with when a probable cause is going to be found that a crime has occurred.
Right.
Has to do with the actual fear that it instilled in the person that reported it. And so more than anything, I think the best thing that parents can do right now is just talk with their children about the seriousness of what they say to other students, of what they say on social media, and really encourage them to do something in their evening time other than be on those platforms, because there are consequences for what you say.
All right. Well, guys, thank you all.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.